ASME and the ASME Foundation are putting a spotlight on the women who are engineering change. On Thursday, March 20th, 2025 in Washington, D.C., Reinventing the Future brings together leaders in the engineering community to celebrate innovation and honor the amazing women who are transforming engineering for good. For more information, to secure your tickets, and to learn about sponsorship opportunities, please visit asmefoundation.org/RTF.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Unconventional Engineering. I'm your host, Jay Flores, along with my friend, Tom Costabile, Executive Director and CEO of ASME. What's new, Tom?
Jay, how are you? Again, I just want to say thank you. I'm still smiling and beaming over our Drop Me In event that took place in Los Angeles. Great time. I measure the success of an event by the facial expressions in the audience. You could hear a pin drop when you were talking in that place, and yet everybody was just glued to what you were saying. So my thanks again. And again, Jay, I ask you a simple question. It's not magic, it's science, right?
Of course. I had a wonderful time too, and it was great to have all of the ASME board of directors there, yourself as well. I think they had just as much fun as the kids did.
They
And
did.
it's great to see those inspiring reactions. And speaking of inspiring young minds to pursue a career in engineering, what a great segue to introduce today's guest. Not only does she work at NASA as a spacecraft systems engineer, but she's also a well-known science content creator and influencer. Please welcome Joan Melendez-Misner to the show.
Hi, friends. How's it going?
Pretty good. We're really happy to have you here. We know you're in the middle of a move, so thanks for joining your time to be here with us and showcase some of your exciting work.
No, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you all about myself and STEM and science communication.
Great. Not to mention, Joan, I love the opportunity to talk to anybody that's a rocket scientist. So thank you. It'll be fun.
I mean, any excuse to say it's not rocket science to any conversation is always fun.
Yeah, cool, cool. So, Joan, we have plenty of time to go into depth about your current role and experience. But before we do so, we understand that you're a self-proclaimed, quote, band nerd. What's your instrument of choice?
Um, yeah, I trained classically as a clarinet. So clarinet is my instrument of choice. I also play saxophone and the piano. So I've been playing since elementary school and all the way through college. I was lucky enough to get a scholarship to play clarinet at my university, and it was a lot of fun.
In my prior life, I spent a lot of time in the music and movie business, but I applaud individuals. I can't play anything, so that's a self-chosen piece. But
I gave up
Yeah,
piano as soon as I could.
I mean, for me, it feels like it's you could kind of relate music to math and science a little bit because there is some background behind that. So it's really neat to be able to see like the music theory and the behind the scenes of how progressions and the chords and how all of that relates. And so it's kind of neat that I ended up being an engineer because I had that passion from the very beginning. It's just on the music side and just being able to kind of incorporate both of them together.
so, Joan, many of our guests have spoken with great passion about those who have influenced their careers. Something new we're introducing for our show is to ask, who are your top three influencers?
Top three influences.
That's a great question. I think throughout life, when you're a kid, you're very much influenced by your family. So top three, I would say my mother is one of my top influences in my life, just because I'm the first one in my family to graduate college. So she had sort of a more difficult life, and like every parent, they want the best for their children. So as an early age, she saw my curiosity for space and science, and she fed that. Instead of kind of ignoring those questions that a little kid said as, can I eat a star? Can I bite a star? She bought me books about space and stars and how that correlates into, our universe in general. So definitely my mom is top three. And then the other two, I personally just, admire a lot of folks that have had the positions that I have now before me. So, as we all know, STEM is still a very male dominated field, with women only making about 28% of the STEM field. And so being able to see people like Poppy Northcutt, who was the first female engineer in mission control who helped land the Apollo into the moon, and being able to look at her and her career and how she paved the way for myself to be in this role. And then also, the Latina women who are engineers in the space industry that I completely look up to, and I just feel that because of them, I'm the way that I am today. So yeah, definitely. I think I said a lot of people, but top three: my mother, Poppy Northcutt, and a lot of the female engineers who work in the space industry, and then female astronauts as well, who paved the way for myself to eventually go to space one day.
Yeah, the one of my favorite movies about the three brilliant women, and a piece in there with John Glenn saying, as long as they've done the calculations, I'm cool.
Yeah,
So
Hidden Figures. It's
Hidden
absolutely
Figures.
one of my favorite, absolutely one of my favorite movies of all time as well.
Yeah.
I love that one as well, and it's so cool to hear your background. Very similar to mine, in the sense that I didn't have a engineer in the family prior to, but I had that kind of guidance and inspiration from an early age, and then looked for other role models. But there's still that space, there's that the inspiration, but then there's that gap between when you're inspired and excited to then how do you actually break into the engineering field. So can you tell us a little bit about how you took that inspiration that you received and then actually made your way into a STEM career?
Yeah, it's really neat because a lot of people don't really know that my degree is in chemical engineering and chemistry. I know that this is a mechanical engineering podcast, so I apologize for that. But the reason I chose that career is because before I even wanted to get into engineering and science, I wanted to be a doctor. So I wanted to help people, have that. Being able to help those, especially, maybe go into space medicine, being able to help astronauts make sure that they're intact and that they're ready to go to space. And so, I first wanted to do that. And, I did the regular classes in high school. So I did the science and the math. And I also volunteered at a local hospital my senior year, which really helped me out figure out that being a doctor was not the path for me because the first time I volunteered, I was at an emergency room. As you all know, emergency room is not the funnest place in the world. So there's a lot of blood gushing everywhere, a lot of needles everywhere, and I literally passed out. So from then on, I was like a hit in the face that I was like, you know what, you cannot do this anymore. So I started college, and I remember my very first professor who talked to me about engineering and talked to me about the path of maybe becoming, chemical, aerospace, or some type of engineer. And, again, at first I thought that it wasn't for me just because, I didn't see myself in that field. I didn't see a lot of people that looked like me in that field. So I was just like, it's not for me. But we talked a little bit about the possibility of being able to, endless possibilities of what you can do with an engineering degree. So for me, like I said, I started off curiosity as a kid, kind of flourished into what I wanted to do. That didn't work out, so I had to start over and figure out what I wanted to be. And so I think for me, talking to people who are in this career really helped me out, being able to flourish into the engineer that I am today, as well as internships along the way. I know that when I talk to students, internships I think is extremely important because it shows you if it's something that you want to get into. So for me, example, I could not be a doctor after I passed out, so that got out the window. So I had to try again, and so then I got a lot of engineering internships in aviation and aerospace and space, and I fell in love with the field, and so kind of blossomed after I graduated. Being able to get that internship experience landed me a position as a professional in the aerospace field. And since then, I've just never looked back. I love what I do, being able to learn something new every single day, being able to learn from my peers, from my mentors. And that one professor that I talked to when I first started and talked to me about engineering, I still keep in contact with him every single day, just because I think it's extremely important to, give thanks to the folks that helped you along the way. And he kind of opened up my eyes to engineering, and I'm super thankful for the opportunity that he gave me.
That's great. So, Joan, Mission Integration Systems Engineer at NASA. Explain for our audience that what do you actually do and some of the projects that you work on. It sounds pretty cool to me.
It's super cool, but I know that it's a mouthful, so I will try to break it down as much as possible. If you look at it from sort of like a bird's eye point of view, so when you send stuff to space, you're sending rovers, you're sending satellites, you can sometimes send astronauts, different payloads to space. So as a mission integration engineer, you're tagged with making sure that whatever you send to space survives the launch. I'm going to kind of give an example because I love roller coasters. I live in Orlando. We have so many theme parks around here. So when I go on a roller coaster, I want to make sure that as soon as I sit down on the roller coaster, I'm in my seat from the start all the way through the end. So there's going to be ups, turns, going upside down, going fast, going slow, but I want to make sure that I'm intact by the time I get to the end of the roller coaster. So that's my main job as a mission integration engineer is we want to make sure that that satellite, that rover, or the astronauts that we sent to space survived the launch. And there's so many different factors that can go against, launching a rocket, gravity being one of them. My job is to, again, make sure that everything is safe and it gets to space to where it's supposed to be. My day to day can be from, writing the requirements that we're going to need to making sure that people are safe to actually testing it. And then the most exciting part, which is launching itself. And so for me, I love what I do because it's something new every single day. Currently, I'm working on about like 4 to 5 missions at a time. So not only are you doing something different every day, but sometimes the missions are in different stages. And so, I could be sending a satellite to space that's going to be giving us weather here in Florida. It's really important. We just had a hurricane pass by. We want to make sure that we have the most up-to-date information. To sending something to an asteroid that's going to collide with an asteroid to ensure that we are safe from any asteroids that ever will be coming to Earth. And so, the things that I do is really exciting. Being able to work with brilliant minds, being able to work on hardware that's going to go to space or other planets we're exploring. The universe is something that I pinch myself every single day.
That's so cool. I mean, that's basically the way I can summarize it. That's so cool. There's so much that I think we take for granted and how much engineering and technical side of things there is in sending things to space or even riding your favorite rides in Orlando. So thanks for sharing that. And I want to kind of explore that deeper. We have a new segment that I'd like to transition to called Innovation Station.
Innovation Station.
It seems that every day we're learning new things for applications of artificial intelligence. So, how are you using AI in your work, and what sort of impact do you think it will have on the future of the space program?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because we're going into sort of like you said, a new phase, it's kind of like unknown territory. And, at least at my job, we're trying to see how we can incorporate AI into our everyday. So a good example is, we do analysis to make sure that, like I mentioned, they survive or whatever we send to space survives the launch. And so we test different loads, we test different avionic boxes, we test so many different things, and we have to do analysis to make sure that it's correct. And so what we're currently doing right now is, we perform our own analysis how we've always done it. And then we have sort of like another subset of having AI perform that same analysis. And then we compare to make sure that if they're seeing I say there as if AI is real, but if AI has run the analysis and our analysis is a little bit different, we try to learn from it to see what is it that we're doing different versus what is it that the AI is seeing that we're not seeing, or vice versa, or something that is missing that we still can't 100% utilize the AI analysis versus our own. So we're trying to integrate an AI as much as possible in our everyday. Like I mentioned, it's still kind of new. So right now it's sort of like a test bed. We don't want to just 100% send a Mars rover to Mars with just AI because it could take a wrong turn. It could go to Venus or Mercury. We don't know yet, but we just want to make sure that we're at the forefront of this new technology advancement, and we want to make sure that we're not left behind as one of the pioneers of advancing technology forward. And we want to make sure that we're right there with them.
That's great, John. I remember I was in high school when the Apollo landed on the moon, and one of the things that I was impressed with back then, and I'll never forget, is the social consciousness of the individuals building a spacecraft, so that it wasn't contaminated, and we would not contaminate a world that we didn't understand. Um, as Jay said, I see AI just being another value added part that I've got millions of my friends coming to me in a matter of nanoseconds telling me what else I should be considering. And it's sad, as you know, as being an engineer or a mission integration systems engineer, that type of data makes you think. And then how do we go, 2 or 3 steps beyond? So AI gets you 10 or 20 steps beyond. But
Oh
I want,
yeah, I mean, if I was in college, I'd be using AI to do all of my homework, if I'm being completely honest. I'm kidding.
yeah, just
No, but I
just
think
don't tell your teachers.
don't tell your teachers. I'm just kidding. I think it's, again, there's always a turning point with new technology. Back then when computers started to become smaller, more portable, have laptops, we can read books in our fingertips versus going to the library. So AI is just another form of new advancement where we need to figure out how we can incorporate that to make our lives better. And so, with tools in our fingertips, we need to make sure that we have the most up-to-date tools to stay in the game, especially, NASA being known as one of the ones that are constantly looking forward instead of 10 steps back. So we just want to make sure that we're at the forefront and using the tools at our disposal.
I agree with you. And I encourage a lot of our staff to use AI in a very constructive way, and make sure you fact check it. I'm still not a believer in trying to use AI to create a scientific or a problem, solve a problem that's our job. We should know that. But to enhance that, I think that's a great step. But
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to step back a second because I was intrigued earlier when you mentioned that you're a science influencer. So let's see if we can create a few more by answering this question for our audience. How did that idea come about? What does that entail? And who were you hoping to influence?
So I know I grew up with a really pretty famous science influencer by the name of Bill Nye,
Yeah,
formerly known to us students, Bill Nye the Science Guy.
yeah.
So I saw that as a kid, and it just it intrigued me just because the way that he would talk about science, he made it more in a more engaging way. Because there's a difference between when your teachers are trying to teach you something, you're getting ready for a test, and internally as a kid you're like, I don't want to know any of this. But if someone else is showing how you can use physics to be able to launch a rocket, or be able to use chemistry to form slime and things like that, something that can relate to kids, I think that's super super helpful. So Bill Nye the Science Guy was always in the back of my mind when I first started my social media. But at the time, not only did I want to share science and engage students with science, but I also wanted to kind of take a step back and give them more of an insight as to who I am as well. And so I think it's really important to, when you're trying to influence, or when you're trying to be a science influencer, is I think a lot of people crave the honesty and, the person behind the account. And so for me, what got me kind of up in the game is I shared a lot of my ups and downs as being an engineer, as well as how I got to where I am today, including all those ups and downs. Because I think with social media, a lot of the times you see sort of the highlight reel of, hey, I'm launching a rocket, or I'm doing A, B, and C, but it doesn't show everything underneath. One of my favorite analogies is that like iceberg analogy. So you kind of sort of see the top of the iceberg, which is the success, the working at NASA, or getting to where you want to be, but then you don't see everything underneath, which is the rejection, the failure, the you stumbling and you making a mistake. And so being honest about your career in the STEM field online, I think resonates really well with people, especially people who want to get into this career, who may not necessarily think that they're smart enough to be a rocket scientist or work at NASA or anything like that, because they don't have that 4.0. Being honest about it and being able to kind of peel the onion a little bit and show that I wasn't either. I failed classes as well, just as much as you. I think humanizes the STEM profession and builds the confidence of those that really are interested in these careers to continue on, to keep on going, to get motivated. So for me, I'm hoping to influence, everything from little kids to keep them excited about science and STEM and engineering to, folks either in college or in their professional career at the moment. A lot of people, I know that's like a huge wide net, but I think that it's really important to be able to kind of, you know, if you're going to influence for a lot of people. And so that's what my content is, you know, I talk about science, I talk about how to do science experiments, but I also talk about the, you know, the motivation side of things, and in hopes that people continue their career in STEM, if they feel like they don't belong, or get people interested in STEM, to realize that, you know, engineering and science is pretty much all around them. So yeah, that's what I hope to continue doing in my career, as a science or STEM influencer.
You know, Joan, I really appreciate you saying that, and the passion with what you speak. I'd have to do it. It's very simple. And Jay, as you can see, because we're on our Zoom call as we're doing this, the smile on her face is just that tells it all. So tells it all. Joan, don't ever stop.
Yeah, I appreciate it
Thank
so
you.
much because when I see your content, it reminds me of some of those times where it was a little bit more difficult going through my college years, or even younger times where I didn't know what I wanted to be, and you know, hadn't really met someone that had done something like what you're doing today. So I think it helps show that just because it's difficult doesn't mean you're bad at it, right? Engineering is challenging for everyone, and it's challenging because we're trying to change the world. We're trying to do things that have never been done before. But if we stick with it, really cool things can happen. And I know you and I have had conversations before about, I think you called it like the elusive math gene or something like that, like that.
I was just going to say
It
that,
just
yeah, the
doesn't
math or
exist.
science gene, it does not exist. As someone, you know, as someone who has ADHD, ADD, it was really difficult for me to really understand how to study when I was in school. So a lot of the times when I would fail classes or not pay attention, it wasn't that I was interested in, or that I was not interested in the subject, or that I, you know, did not know the subject. It's just I had to learn how to learn, essentially. And so, you know, a lot of students out there may feel the same way, and that's why it's really important to talk about these things, is because, you know, someone out there could be listening to this podcast and say, oh my gosh, I have ADD, I fail classes, I still love science, and I can still be a rocket scientist. Like, how inspiring is that? So I think it's really important for us to open up a little bit more, and, you know, kind of steer away from the highlight reel on social media. And I know, Jay, you do an amazing job about it as well. You know, being able to kind of showcase all the stuff that we went through, the struggles, and still end up to where we want to be, and, you know, be happy in our career. I think it's really important to, you know, share that so folks can resonate with it.
And I think it makes it that much more special. But what do you think, parents listening in, or teachers, maybe even engineering industry professionals, what can they do to help others kind of inspire that journey? And what is what we do help make that possible?
Yeah, I think, you know, the rise of social media can is has been kind of good and bad, right? So I think that, you know, the bad side of things, as I mentioned, that highlight reel, that people, you know, will start to hope, you know, maybe do that comparison game and have that, you know, imposter syndrome kind of seep in. But the good about that is, you know, like people like you and me sharing our truth, sharing our stories behind it, to showcase that, you know, it's not all that you see on social media. There's a lot of work behind it. So, you know, I've seen a lot of teachers use social media and, you know, teach, with these little, with videos, use trends out there, and being able to showcase science in a very trendy kind of way, which I think it's really inspiring. And I love seeing content like that. I think what I will say to like parents and teachers is just, you know, if there's some kind of curiosity, kind of foster that curiosity, you know, be able to showcase how, you know, there's STEM all around them. So when I talk to parents of young kids, you know, they'll say, my kid is really interested in science and STEM, but I can't get them to focus. And so what I usually tell them is, you know, what is it, something that they're interested in? So when I was a kid, I loved Harry Potter. And so there's a lot of really cool games out there where you can use coding to, you know, code a wand to do a spell. Or if you're into Star Wars, you can code a lightsaber, you can code a droid. So being able to incorporate a lot of the things that they as kids like, and their interests, and being able to incorporate some kind of a STEM element to it, I think is really a fun way to be able to foster that curiosity and continue. And then for folks who are, you know, in high school and kind of a little bit older, same concept. I know that, when I was in high school and college, I really loved, space. I love being, you know, being able to go out and watch movies and things like that. So being able to incorporate the science behind, a movie or the science behind a TV show, I think is really neat to be able to, go to their interest and being able to foster their interest a little bit more. I know I try to do that with, I don't know if you guys watch the show The Expanse. It's a really amazing TV show on Prime. It's about like space and stuff like that. And so, I talk about the science behind The Expanse, like how they are able to fly through space, and the physics in space is a little bit different than the physics on Earth. So Star Wars sometimes gets things wrong, stuff like that. Being able to sort of incorporate that inside your interest, I think, is a really good way to continue on and have folks interested in engineering and STEM.
Yeah, I think finding that science behind your passions, that's the mic drop moment. Well said. I can't agree with that anymore.
Wow, I'm telling you, this is unbelievable, Jay. Joan, it's time is flying by. Unfortunately, we're going to have to say goodbye at this point. And I just wanted to thank you for joining us today. I wish you well, no pun intended, on your mission. And but before I let you go, any book recommendations that you would have for our audience?
Oh, so not only am I a band nerd, but I'm also a book nerd. So now I have to ask you the question of what category. I can talk about motivational books. I could talk about finance books, space books. Right now, I'm really into sort of biographies of astronauts, just because as myself, I'm trying to go to space one day, and it's motivating me to really see the background of how a lot of these astronauts got to be where they are. So being able to see folks that didn't have much growing up, or that were in different situations, and still being able to persevere and make it to space is something that's what I'm really into right now. So I'm reading so many astronaut biographies. So that's my book recommendation for anybody who wants to go to space. Honestly, being able to learn about the astronauts who have gone to space is really motivating to, again, bringing it down to earth, pun intended. Being able to see sort of like where they started and then how they ended up where they were is really motivating for me. So that's my book recommendation for anyone who wants to go to space. Read up on your astronauts. I think it's super interesting and super motivating.
Well, thank you, Joan. I've been fortunate. I know a couple of former astronauts, and one of my dear friends, Jose Hernandez, he tells the story. He has a great book out. He just has a brand new movie out on Amazon Prime, and his story is unbelievable. And the part that I was intrigued with when I first met him in way back in 2009 was that his journey of how many times he received rejection notices from NASA. That didn't stop him. He just kept on going. And that part of his biography is that motivation, that drive, the perfection. Not a surprise that he's up in space, but all around.
Absolutely.
But thank you for that piece. Again, thank you for your passion. Thank you for what you're doing. We'll do this again. Stay in touch. And to our audience, we truly appreciate you listening to our conversation and for your continued support of our show. Be sure to visit asme.org for the latest updates on topics and initiatives surrounding the work we do for the engineering community. And also, feel free to reach out to us at Unconventional Engineering at media@asme.org. Joan, thank you very much. Jay, it's always a pleasure to do something with you. And my thanks to both of you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Joan. Thanks, Tom.
Join ASME and the ASME Foundation for a celebration of engineering excellence with leaders in STEM innovation at the Optimism Engineered Gala on May 1st, 2025. Held at the Mandarin Oriental in New York City, the evening honors trailblazers, change makers, and all those who share a passion for equity in engineering and sustainability for the world. To secure your ticket and for information about sponsorship and more, please visit asmefoundation.org/events/gala2024.